Julie, one thing that I hear a lot is when parents go to IEP team meetings, Individualized Education Program team meetings, and they request something, an outside evaluation, some kind of a service, a certain summer program, maybe an out-of-district placement, and the response that they get is, we can't say yes or no to that because that's something that the special education director has to approve.
Or the decision maker isn't here at the meeting.
Or that has to go through central office, that request. Here's what the problem is with it, and then we can talk about, you hear this one a lot too?
A lot, okay. Yes.
This is the problem with it. The IDEA requires there to be someone at that IEP team meeting who is familiar with the resources of the school district. And, the IEP team is supposed to have the authority to commit the resources of the school district. And so what ends up happening is that students lose out on services, evaluations, things to which they're entitled because there's no decision maker there, and there's supposed to be a decision maker there.
Right. And a lot of time can go by in between these meetings. And in the meanwhile, the student may be regressing, things certainly aren't getting better, and tick-tock, time goes by. The fact that somebody couldn't make a decision at that meeting is having an adverse impact on the student.
It can really snowball into the loss of a whole school year, sometimes more, because let's say you ask for an evaluation at a meeting in October and you're told the special ed director needs to approve that. Then you call the special ed director and the director doesn't get back to you, or there's a changeover or whatever. You're now in December, and then the director says that's for the IEP team to decide. Now suddenly the director goes with the team to the team meeting to either approve or deny it, and then you have a meeting in January and it's approved, but guess what? You're not going to have that evaluation until the spring, and now here we are planning for the following school year. That's how quick these things really matter, which is why Congress wanted that team to have authority and decision-making authority for a child. So,
so what do you say?
What do you say?
I've got some ideas. Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So one of the things that I say to a parent is, if that happens to you, and I'm going to give you a tip to avoid it happening, because that's really the goal, is not to play gotcha, but to make sure your child actually gets the services, right? So to avoid it happening, what I would say, let's do the avoid it first, but then if not. What I would say to avoid that is if you know that you're going to be requesting something at the meeting, and sometimes you don't know, sometimes that evolves because of what you learn. But if you already know going into that meeting that you're going to be a request that probably is an additional line item for the school district, additional cost for the school district, the kinds of things that generally need the approval of someone a little higher up in authority than maybe your building level administrator has, then I would give advance notice to the school district that you're going to be making that request, preferably in writing. And it doesn't have to be aggressive. An email to the building administrator, copy to the special ed director saying, we have this IEP meeting coming up on October 15th. I believe that Johnny needs an outside evaluation. I'm going to be making that request at the meeting, and I just wanted to make sure so you could plan to have the right people there who could address my request. I mean, that may avoid you being in a situation where nobody is there with authority.
And Jen, do you always have to reveal exactly what you're going to ask for, or can you just say, I would really like a decision maker at the IEP team meeting, because I anticipate requesting some
things. You
things.
don't have to, but this is one of those things that just because people can lawfully do something doesn't mean that they should, and just because somebody can lawfully not do something doesn't mean they shouldn't do it. I mean, there are legal requirements, and then there's just the practical reality of getting things done. So I would consider that to be a courteous and appropriate way to handle it. It doesn't mean you have to pin yourself down to the very specific evaluations you want. You could make it vague, as vague as, I have some real concerns about his program, and I was hoping to have a higher level administrator there to discuss my concerns with
nice alternative.
That's a nice alternative, because you may not know. You may
exactly
not know
what you're going to be asking
exactly,
for.
Exactly. Right. So I would say if that happens, now that's avoiding it. But if you can't avoid it and it happens and you show up and nobody's there with authority, what I highly recommend is that at that point you say, are you telling me, whoever's the chair of the meeting, the administrator in charge of the meeting, are you saying that there's nobody at this IEP who has decision-making authority about this request? And if the answer you get is no. That's right. That's what I'm telling you, which I have even gotten before, which always stuns me, but I've even gotten it before. The response should be, thank you. I would really appreciate it if you could put that in whatever page on your state's IEP reflects your parental input and concerns and prior written notice of any requests you've made that have been refused. And just, in fact, say, you've refused my request for this evaluation, or even said, you've tabled my request for this evaluation because you didn't know whether it was yes or no, because there was nobody here with authority. Then you've documented it. You might even, when you get home, pop an email further documenting it.
So you minimally want to document it.
Yeah.
The other thing that I run into a lot as a special education advocate, I'm often in a position where parents are barely affording my services to begin with. And the last thing that I want to do is have to come back to a IEP team meeting at their expense, which is already a burden and a challenge for them to get me there to begin with. So I have been known many times to say, well, can we call the person?
Right.
And it's a very practical way of saying, exploring the idea. Can we see if that decision maker is available by phone? And there is no reason that you can't put a phone in the middle of the table, and if that person is available, have that input from the person via a phone call. And that's often a really good thing to ask.
Yeah, and there's no reason a parent can, on their own, just say, is there a way you can get her on the phone, right?
Absolutely.